I'm a senior programmer at the Toronto International Festival. I do a lot of Nordic films, and I'm here to welcome you to the post-screening discussion following Friðrik Þór Friðriksson's Children of Nature. We're here with one of the founders of the Ageless Film Festival, Sylvia Lustgarten. And we're trying to connect with Friðrik, but we've had some connection issues, so hopefully he'll join us. But if not, we're going to have a discussion about the film, which is, of course, I think the only film to officially be nominated for a Best Foreign Language Film Oscar from Iceland. Sylvia, do you want to talk about your impressions of the film and the issues it raises?
I was very impressed with the film. I was impressed with the fact that there really is a film without villains. Actually, a film where everyone in it seemed to mean well. Everyone in it had people who had really were accomplishing well in their lives, and yet somehow in this one area of the care of one older person, or two older people in this case, who were removed from living life meaningfully as they saw it, and who by some quirk of fate managed to transcend it. That was the remarkable qualities of the woman in it. Her imagination, her willfulness inspired the inner qualities of her male friend of the past. So that it was important for all of us to pay attention to. And what I felt, it really indicated the lack of any communication between any of the partners in this scene. And that is an issue that I think we have to think about, is communication. How our parents and children communicate. You can't plan for a problem area. You can't do it quickly. It has to be rethought and replanned. And if you don't know how to think and talk together honestly and meaningfully, you can't do it. And you end up the way the old people's homes that we saw. We saw not a bad old people's home, but simply a misguided one. They were trying to do their best, but they were like treating people in kindergarten who were really sophisticated older people. This is the other film with important lessons for us all. And it goes back to kindergarten. How do we talk with our children when they're little? How do we teach them how to really communicate with all people at all ages? That is one of the most important thoughts that I had. I wonder what yours were.
Oh, I agree. Do you think that their inability to communicate was based on the sort of pace of life the younger generation was living? Because he obviously has difficulties Thor, the main character, has difficulties communicating with his daughter and her husband, and obviously his granddaughter too. Did they just lose they couldn't remember how to speak? Maybe the granddaughter didn't know how to interact with their grandfather at all, or was it just the pace of the life they were living, or the kind of life they were living?
Right. Well, I think there was the shock component. It was unfair. The solution was unfair. The housing situation enters into it as a very important problem. And there was no place for him where they lived. They lived in a very tight urban apartment.
Yes.
It wasn't a place for him and dislocating the daughter in this shocked way showed the good intentions of the mother. They couldn't put him on the sofa in the living room or something. But they did give him a room. They intended well, and I think we should look at that. The people of good intentions are sending people off to these terrible long-term homes, fancier or plain, but they are lacking in the human dimension. And my voice is lacking too.
I think, do we have water, or maybe I think one of the interesting things that you mentioned in terms of them living on top of each other, there's that great scene where he brings one of the few things he treasures that he takes from the farm when he moves to the city is the grandfather clock, and it's clearly a family heirloom, and he puts it on the wall and takes down the granddaughter's poster, and it's a nice juxtaposition between this symbol of time that he's carried with him for a long time, and it's probably been passed down. It seems that he seems to treasure it, and she's more interested in this sort of disposable poster of a rock star, who is actually the biggest rock star in Iceland and has been for a long time. But it was nice. It was interesting to see those different values in that one scene.
Yeah, and the shock value. He wasn't talking to anyone, should he hang it up or not. He himself was very individualistic. He wasn't communicating or thinking what a teenager would want. He allowed himself to be given her bed.
Yes. I think that's... Go ahead. I think that's 100% true. He has, he's, you can sense those sort of generational and also geographic differences. Obviously in the old girlfriend he finds in the home, she doesn't, they're from the north and they don't really like the south. I think she says, I don't want to die in this garbage dump in the south, referring to the home. She's quite the live wire, really. But that sort of comes up over and over again, which is interesting. At that time, Iceland was shifting from a very rural agricultural, it was mostly agriculture and fishing that their economy is based on, and that a lot of people were moving to Reykjavik or the suburbs around it. I mean, most of the people in Iceland live in Reykjavik, I'd say two-thirds or even higher. But you can see that cultural shift, and Thorger and his friends in the home are used to being independent, and they don't have that option anymore when they get to the home.
Mm-hmm. And with him, they take pains to show him to be a cultivated person. So the meaning of the music in the film is being an organist. There was something that didn't add up, and perhaps he was in a state of depression because of all the loneliness. There was no real fact to me to show that he had to give up at that moment and take off for the city.
Yes.
Take off for his daughter, to do that also in a way that couldn't work. He knew his daughter, he knew her husband, he knew their way of life. I mean, he was very smart. He was a very smart guy. He could fix the car, he could do all sorts of things that he did.
He's quite resourceful.
A very resourceful person. And somehow that resourcefulness was not apparent. Was he in a state of depression, which is another thing in dealing with people, to look at what is wrong, how do we solve it? That process got missing.
Yeah, I do think I think he's also, deeply hurt when they sort of don't really, I think it's more the pace of their lives and the fact that they don't have the space, but, he expected to be welcomed and they didn't really welcome him. I think that did sort of exacerbate the tensions.
Had they, it seems to me, had they been given a chance, had he called them and said, look, I really need to change my life now. How can we do it? How can you help me? What is your responsibility to me? What do you feel? He responded very well to this woman who gave him some hopeful plans, and he engaged in them very quickly and very, very confidently.
Yes. I think they have the same values.
The daughter wasn't given a fighting chance to adapt, to see how her family might react, what they might do. They might move to a larger house. They might find him a place near them. They might look with him at what he can develop within his own community without even needing to leave. As I say, the lack of human communication seems to me to be the problem that we have to pay attention to from this. And that's what ageism brings, that one doesn't talk to the older person as an equal who can think.
Yes, I think that's that inability to communicate between the generations is, because he doesn't have that problem communicating with people, his sort of contemporaries, and when he moves to the home, their other friend in the home, and the girlfriend, they communicate very quickly and very easily. I did love that. Go ahead.
And he also was communicating and had a relationship with his roommate.
Yes. Yeah. He's funny.
And the traumatic experience with the death is one of the reasons they no longer have shared rooms. I know at Baycrest, which is a center, it's a Jewish geriatric center in Toronto, they gave up shared rooms. And I think it created difficulties at a difficult time of life. It wasn't time for people to have to adapt to another person.
Yes.
So,
what did you,
mm-hmm.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was thinking also that life has changed and people don't know how to talk to each other, tell stories to each other, because it's all done so much better on the media.
Yes.
And that is something to pay attention to, that we have to, a whole different way of doing things has to be started very early in the life of children, on how to really communicate with their parents. And parents have to put time into it. The current parent, like the difference between a mother at home and a mother who has a career and financial problems and maybe an unstable marriage, which are all part of our contemporary culture, doesn't have the psychic energy to adapt to her child and to be there when they came, when they scraped their knee or whatever else happened, or had a bad experience at school. There wasn't someone there to listen, to talk, to comfort.
I think it's, Friedrik's done other films about where seniors were at the center of the film. He did a film that was kind of a love letter to his mother, called The Mama Go-Go, and but the mother's been in the city for a long time, and she has a very good relationship with their grandson, and they get along really well. Although there's an exceptional scene in the film where a very funny scene where the kid is she's watching her son on TV and he's winning an award, and it's obviously based on Friedrich, and she's not paying attention to the kid briefly, and he drinks a bunch of vodka and like passes out, and she takes him to the hospital, and she'd been drinking too, and the police stop her, and they say, oh well, they give her a breathalyzer, and they say, oh, you might seems like you might be mildly intoxicated, ma'am. And she says, oh, I don't think that thing works. Why don't you check my grandson and see if it test registers with him? And they test the grandson and he comes out as intoxicated. And so it's like, clearly it doesn't work. People should try to check that out if they get a chance to see it. It's a very funny film. Very sweet film too. A lot of references to the way, this sort of magical, elegiac way that children of nature. And I don't know if anybody's submitted any questions on the chat or any comments, but we've got a minute or two if anybody wants to jump in and ask Sylvia or me a question about the film, or just make a comment. What did you make? How did you like the ending? I thought the ending was quite beautiful. Their kind of escape and the mist and the kind of magical conclusion, or the way they escape, because the car just sort of shows up all over town, and and it was a beautiful, it was a beautiful goodbye with her on the beach. You want to talk about the ending a bit?
I don't know if I remember. What I'm remembering is the beautiful folk music in it.
Yes.
Yeah. That music in our lives. That is the ending. The ending is getting vague for me. Tell me.
Oh well. At the end, they decide they've had enough in the home. After the roommate passes away, and they steal a car. Again, Thorger is very resourceful. Yeah. And then they drive back to their hometown, and she they have a night in a cabin, and then she, I think, goes out in the morning and passes away, and then he finds her, and then there's almost like a chase, and they kind of meet that the Bruno Ganz figure, who sort of seems like a bit of an angel. I thought it reminded me of Wings of Desire a bit. And then he just sort of disappears again. And there's all these sort of kind of whimsical moments where the car keeps showing up back where it was stolen, and then they disappear in the mist, which is actually quite realistic in Iceland. There's very heavy mists that just pop up out of nowhere, and you can't see at all, like, a couple feet in front of your face. And then the mist goes away. It's a very, very changeable weather, very much like the East Coast of Canada. But yeah, it's a very sort of elegiac ending, and really, really about what's lost in, kind of a drive towards modernization, and the closeness of the family sort of fades, which is, their inability to communicate, as you pointed out. So I think we're getting to our.
But those two did communicate.
They did, yes.
Their life exploded into meaningfulness.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. We do have a question about the opening scene. About them leaving the dog behind, or him shooting the dog, and about why that happened. And I think the primary reason is they didn't feel he could take the dog. But I do think he was moving into a tiny apartment. I think he probably had an inkling that it wouldn't work out. But I also think maybe he didn't feel the dog was aging. And he didn't feel it was fair to move him into, an urban space. And obviously he had misgivings about it. I would also say that there's probably an awareness of a couple of other, kind of a nod to other films, probably the great Vittorio De Sica film Umberto D, which is about the relationship between an older man and an older man who's again, as you mentioned, having like housing issues and health issues, and his only friend is his dog. And I think it's kind of reference to that, but there's also a reference to probably a reference to an older Icelandic film as well called Land and Sons, where it's actually a young man who leaves the countryside and wants to escape it, and he kills the family horse, which is sort of their prized possession. And his justification when he's asked is that he didn't want to have anything to come back to, and I think there's an element of finality to it, which I think sort of ratchets up the elegiac aspect of the film, what follows in Children of Nature. And the other question we got is, do we consider the supernatural aspects spiritual? Which I did. What did you, when, the sort of them sort of disappearing and coming back or evading the police through mist, did you see that as a kind of spiritual aspect to their escape, Sylvia? Did you see their escape is kind of spiritual, or is it because it is sort of supernatural and there's trolls and things like that? It's very Icelandic that way.
Oh, or spiritual than that. I think the one shocking thing about it is that they were able to carry it out and go. Now, this was a real affirmation. It was a spiritual affirmation of the older person. I think this was obviously a deeply felt film. It worked like at every stage. It was quietly gentle throughout.
Yes.
Nothing particularly harsh to say. A little bit about the daughter's family was about the only moments of criticalness that appeared in it. And a bit of satirizing of the home for the aged and some of the sort of kindergartenish dancing of the people.
Yeah.
Sort of saying, like, why are they enjoying it? But they were enjoying it because they were moving, they were dancing, there's music. They might have done different things had they planned it themselves. The people in the home weren't all dead, wrong, and bad. They were just clumsy, I would say. They were insufficiently understanding, misapplying middle-class values, perhaps, to the home, instead of creating a democratic society, which I would feel would be the pattern in group living, if having the group, if you looked at an ideal home, you would have meetings of the residents and saying, what are we going to do next? What shall we plan? How shall we do it? Really engaging the people, many of whom can do a lot.
Yes.
And even within a group, working with people at different levels, which we have to learn how to do. How we can get these people at different levels interacting meaningfully, helpfully to one another. Each one is it's like the spokes of a wheel. Everything goes to the leadership and the professional staff, and they treat each person individually. It's not a group in a meaningful way that uses the true capacity of the people in the home.
I think that's a great point.
Really, really lost, and it doesn't need to be. But for this, you really need more highly trained staff, a whole new psychology of older person, an overcoming of ageism. I'm 96, but I don't feel very old. I don't. I feel less.
I think you got there. Yeah.
I feel less old than when I was 40.
Cool. I mean, I would point out in Friedrich, a lot of his films have this sort of casual references to the supernatural, and it's a trait that's pops up a lot in Icelandic cinema. There's a lot of, I mean, the landscape in Iceland is very much like you see in Children of Nature. It's very rich, but it's also kind of lunar, and the weather is sort of unpredictable, and you know, the light and the mist play tricks on your eyes. But there's a long time, there's a lot of folk beliefs and supernatural beliefs in Iceland about trolls and fairies, and you know, there's been roads that have been built so they go around rocks because they believe trolls or fairies live there. There's mythology about how islands were created. Trolls didn't make it home, so they were gigantic, and as a result, these islands were created, or these sort of rock structures that are very famous in Iceland and elsewhere. If you've ever seen some of those pictures, they're quite striking. But I think there's this sort of casual reference to this, and although not a lot of people have those beliefs, they don't not have those beliefs either. So, which is a very Icelandic way of looking at it. They could be fairies or trolls or etc. I think that, but I do think that Friðrik raises the whole. It is a kind of spiritual departure. His way of escaping, and not sort of Thorger's escape, and he refuses to sort of accept the life that they're trying to make for him, which I think is the kind of you know, the spiritual aspect, the spiritual elements underline that kind of supernatural aspect underline that kind of spiritual quest that he's on. So I think that's very much, you know, I think there's a variety of ways to read it, but I think that's certainly there. I think, go ahead.
That was a part of it. There were parts that he was part of. The religious experience was good, and I'm sure the physical care good. There's a lot of things that were working in that system.
Yeah.
Caregiver and patient, rather than older adult.
Yeah.
Some of which was appropriate and much of which wasn't. But so it's doable because it's only partially needs to be changed.
Yes, that's true. So I think we'll maybe wrap it up at this point, but that was a fun discussion. Thanks for your insights in the film, and thanks for watching. As I mentioned, Friedrik's, there's a couple places you can find Friedrik's films online. I think Icelandic Cinema online is one of them, but I would check out films like Iceland, that's definitely something to look at. Movie Days, which is about Friedrik's early life and has a great relationship between the grandfather and the grandson. Mama Go-Go, which is his most recent fiction film. Cold Fever, which is about a Japanese businessman who comes to Iceland for a ritual because his parents had passed away in Iceland, and he's there to honor their memory. And a really great film called Angels of the Universe, which again deals with life in an institution, although in this case it's younger people who have who are dealing with mental health issues. But he's really one of the best Icelandic filmmakers, one of the best European or Nordic filmmakers around too. So hopefully you'll get a chance to check out his films. And I encourage you as well to try and check out Klaus Harrell's film tomorrow, My Sailor, My Love. And thanks for watching. And sorry we couldn't hook up with Friedrik. We couldn't connect, but I hope you enjoyed the discussion anyway. Thanks.
Thanks for being a moderator.
Oh, thanks for discussing the film with me.